Our women dressed themselves in brown or black, and a great ruby on her finger. Under the big straw hat, her skin was a rich olive, and her hair glossy black like my own. I glanced at Greta, at her small, bitter face, closed like a trap, at the long, scrawny arms with which she slapped her children. I looked, too, at the two children standing beside her, with their cunning, suspicious faces. I could not possibly live with Greta. Yet Juniper, we all knew, worked for the devil, and if I worked for her, I might be damned forever. I wrung my hands at my terrible predicament. Just then, Aunt Morag, poor, fearful Aunt Morag, who lived in dread of Gregor's temper, and who rarely raised her voice outside her own home, spoke up in a loud, clear voice. "There is Finbar's opinion to be considered," she said. "Finbar?" said Philin in surprise. Before he went away, he foresaw the possibility of his mother's death, and that Wise Child would need a home until he returned. He said that if that should happen, she was to go to Juniper, and that he had asked Juniper to undertake this for him, and that she had agreed. Juniper neither confirmed nor denied this. She just smiled. It took me a few moments to understand it. Child as I was, I knew perfectly well that Aunt Morag was lying. It would not occur to Finbar to plan my future in that way. He would never have anticipated the problem. So Aunt Morag must be lying for a purpose. The purpose, I knew at once, was to give me a sort of cue, the cue that it was all right to live with Juniper, no matter what I had been told about her. I responded instantly and automatically. "I want to live with Juniper," I said. The priest blushed more furiously than ever. "Is there not a Christian home that will take this child?" he asked. The people murmured amongst themselves again. They knew very well that Juniper could afford to feed me better than any of them could. It was all very well for Philin. No hungry children waited in his house. Uncle Gregor, perhaps not wanting to be outdone by Aunt Morag, perhaps feeling that it was time to exert some sort of patriarchal right over his female possessions, intervened at this point. "If it was Finbar's wish," he said. Perhaps I do him an injustice. Perhaps he too was genuinely anxious about what would become of me. Philin knew that he was defeated. The anger showed clearly enough in his face. "Very well then," he said, "the Kellic shall take her." There was a slight shock of surprise at hearing him use this word. It was a word you used behind people's backs, not to their faces. "Good," said Juniper. "Wise Child, you will need to sit with your grandmother before her funeral. After the funeral, Tilly and I will come and collect you." She gave me her warm, friendly smile, slipped through the crowd, and was gone. The crowd began to disperse, too, not in its usual gossipy fashion, but quickly and silently, as if something distasteful had been completed, and then I was walking home with my aunt and cousins. I walked apart, angry at my public ordeal, but above all frightened. What had come to me that I, alone of everyone I knew, had to live with a witch? Nobody spoke about it, but about halfway home, Coleman slipped his hand into mine. I did not acknowledge that he had touched me, but I did not let go. It was the custom to sit up with our dead, and that night my aunt and I dutifully took our seats beside the body of the old woman, who now looked so different that I did not feel she was my granny at all. They had tidied her hair and dressed her in a gray dress that I recognized, but it was the expression on her face that was quite different.